Thanks. Let me start off by telling you a quick story. In addition to my full-time role as a partner in Foundry Group, which is a software internet investing firm that invests all around the U.S., I'm also a co-founder of an organization called Techstars, which is a startup accelerator that today is based in Boulder, Seattle, Boston, and most recently New York. Techstars runs 90-day programs for first-time entrepreneurs, and that was essentially the thing that inspired the idea around the startup visa. 2 years ago, we had 2 teams out of the 10 that were in Boulder that were founded by immigrants. One of the teams was founded by a pair of Canadians. The other team was founded by a Frenchman and an Englishman. Now, I've always thought that Canadians were scary, difficult people because they could drink more than me. And as a result, through the summer, both of these companies wanted to stay in Boulder post the program. And we spent a fair amount of time trying to figure out how to get them appropriate visas so that they could start their companies in the U.S. and stay in the U.S. They were here one was on a student visa, one was on a visitor visa. I don't remember what the other couple of visa types were. They were valid visas for short periods of time. But as we went through the 90-day program of Techstars, we found it virtually impossible to get them a valid visa to allow them to start their company in the U.S., stay in the U.S., and start building a company that obviously would then subsequently create entrepreneurial jobs in the U.S., and hopefully turn into something very interesting. We went through this process and learned a lot, and so started just talking publicly about it. And as we started talking publicly about it, it turned out that a couple of other venture capitalists and angel investors were struggling with the same kind of things for their companies. This was very perplexing to all of us because essentially the idea that you'd start a company in the U.S. totally natural. The idea that if you're a foreign entrepreneur and you want to come to the U.S. to start a company, not only is totally natural, but it's something that's been going on for a long time. If you look at the basis of major entrepreneurial communities like Silicon Valley, a very large percentage of the great companies in Silicon Valley have one or more immigrant entrepreneurs as founders or executives in the company. Furthermore, none of us had really paid that much attention to it when we were thinking about it. We've been investing in entrepreneurs for a long time. We continually run into this kind of problem, but you never really dug into it until it was in our face, as it were. And what we decided to do was actually try to do something about it and change the way things worked for these entrepreneurs. Now, as we started talking about it, we heard continually from immigration lawyers, policy people, people in government, oh, you're wrong, this is totally doable, it's not hard, you just have to skirt the rules this way, or if you my favorite lawyer thing to hear was, if you just do this, nobody will ever know and it'll be just fine. And that's not really satisfying, especially to an entrepreneur who's betting their life on their company that they're about to create. Furthermore, as we sort of started going through this process, it turned out that you could actually solve this problem with money and time, which, if any of you in the audience are entrepreneurs, know it's 2 things that most startup entrepreneurs don't have. They don't have time to wait. It's not okay to wait 6, 9, 12 months to get your company started while you go through some sort of bureaucratic process. And you don't have $25,000, $50,000 to spend on lawyers to go through a 6, 9, 12-month process. The market's not going to wait for you. It's time to start your company and get going. So last fall, a group of us, about 7 of us, created what is now called Startup Visa. If you want to get a history of it, you can go to startupvisa.com. And we decided to try to get this type of visa put together and promoted and approved without going through sort of traditional PAC and lobby and sort of heavy government approaches. So we started talking about internally as, let's try to hack this visa process in a constructive way. And as part of that process, what we did was we were very open about what we were doing and what the struggles were and what the problems were. Early on in this process, one of the things we heard was that it wouldn't be worth our effort if we tried to create any new visas. so that if there were an additional visa allocation requested as part of something we did, flat out denied. So we said, fine. So we found a visa category that's underserved, EB-5 visa. For those of you that don't know the EB-5, it's the opposite of what you'd want with a startup visa. What the EB-5 visa is a visa that if you're a foreign investor and you invest $1 million in a company in the U.S., you can get a visa. That's fine, whatever. But what we really want is we want the foreign entrepreneurs who are going to come to the U.S., start a company, create jobs, to be the ones that are the recipients of that visa. Second thing we learned was that the way that you make progress with something like this, all of us, by the way, were newbies with regard to any sort of federal legislation, is you need to get someone on the House and someone on the Senate side to get excited about your idea. So we started talking to people that we knew. Turns out Jared Polis from Colorado, who's a very, very successful entrepreneur, started several companies that were sold for hundreds of millions of dollars, who happens to be representative of for Colorado in the House, was working on immigration reform legislation, and this was something that was near and dear to his heart, so he put together a bill on the House side. Senator Kerry from Massachusetts and Senator Lugar from Indiana, Democrat and Republican, similar sort of jobs-focused folks on the Senate side, put together a similar type of Senate bill, which is in the Senate at this point. And what we've done as an organization for Startup Visa is continue to advocate and be clear about the potential of this. What we've done, and some of the things that have happened amongst endorsements from organizations like the National Venture Capital Association, as well as sort of continual momentum across the U.S. in terms of entrepreneurial activity, what we've heard consistently is this is a no-brainer, not because of the immigration dynamics, but because of the job creation dynamics. We actually think that the number of companies that a visa like this could potentially impact is somewhere between 1,000 and a couple of thousand a year. Each of those companies to maintain the visa, the entrepreneurs to maintain the visa, needs to create at least 5 jobs. But as those of us that invest as venture capitalists and technology companies know, many of these companies over the course of a year or two could generate 100 or several hundreds of jobs, and in the extreme success case, several thousands of jobs. The sum of jobs that could get created on an annual basis is something on the order of cumulatively every year an extra 5,000 to 20,000 jobs. And that's a lot of high-paying entrepreneurial jobs being created by immigrants who right now, for a variety of reasons, we're making it difficult for them to come into our country. The last thing I'll leave you with, which I think is something that comes up over and over again and has certainly been part of the innovation discussion in the U.S., is it used to be the case, and I think it still is the case, that the U.S. is the greatest place in the world for creating a company and for innovation entrepreneurship. What's changed is that the U.S. is not the only place that people point to as great places to create companies, especially high-tech, high-innovation content companies. With the internet and with the web, obviously information has been spread broad and wide. There are many other countries now that are very focused on innovation and entrepreneurial activity. The ability for somebody in any country in the world that has somebody that has access to a computer and the internet to get information about what's going on, with a few exceptions, is relatively straightforward. And as a result, as in the U.S., we no longer have a fundamental information advantage in the construct of creating entrepreneurial companies. If we don't have an informational advantage, the advantage we have is a people advantage. And if we eliminate the ability of some of the smartest and best and most innovative people in the world to come to the U.S., we're essentially eliminating that innovation advantage from a people perspective. So if you believe the message, agree with it, and are believers in innovation, support us with Startup Visa, make noise about it, and for those of you in a position to influence it, influence it. Thank you.